What do we call you, sir?
First name, Mr. Last name, Glass.
So, about a week and a bit ago, I saw Glass, the new M. Night Shyamalan film, and it was fine, but at the same time, it is 2019's Batman v Superman. In the sense that it's pretty disappointing, and it's a movie that's trying really hard to be thematically rich and to make like a really important point, and it absolutely fails to say anything meaningful. And that's what I mean when I say Glass is 2019's Batman v Superman. I think it's better than Batman v Superman, but it has that same problem of it's trying so hard to sound smart and it completely fails at it. To the point that I kind of feel bad for the movie because it's clearly trying, but it keeps tripping and falling on its face anyway. So I'm going to start off a bit with non-spoilers. This is just going to be like a bit of a ramble because I just kind of wanted to get a video out. Ironically enough, my last podcast review of a film was Batman v Superman. And here we are now doing Glass, which I think is 2019's Batman v Superman. And I'm going to be making a few comparisons here and there to stuff, as well as The Last Jedi, because I've seen people comparing this movie to The Last Jedi, calling it The Last Jedi of the Unbreakable trilogy. I know I shouldn't be bringing up The Last Jedi because it will set my comments section on fire, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I don't know why, actually. It's too late now. I've already name dropped it, so it's too late now anyway. So let's begin with non-spoilers, just general thoughts if you're interested in seeing it. If you've seen the trailers and you're like, hey, that looks pretty fun, I reckon you'll still enjoy yourself upon seeing it. If you've liked Split and Unbreakable, you might as well see it. I don't think it's a complete waste of time. It's very much a film that you'll have fun in the moment, like I did, but unfortunately, when you start to think about it, like immediately afterwards, you start to see the cracks in the glass. That's a knee slapper. Take a shot every time I make a pun about glass, about the title of this film in this video. I'm not sure what will actually be over the audio of this. Probably like either just trailer footage that's slowed down or just one image that's slowly zooming in. I think that's like a Quentin Reviews reference to like his Rogue One review. Yeah. Something like that. Anyway, Glass. Let's get into it. So, yeah, non-spoilers, it's fine. It's like a 5 out of 10. It's been pretty polarizing so far. I've seen a lot of people who are like, hey, this is a pretty good end to the trilogy. And a lot of people are like, this is such a nonsensical ending to a really good trilogy. I'm in the middle. I've seen some people attack the critics and be like, oh, the critics are wrong. They just don't like comic book movies. Which is false if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score of any MCU film. And I mean, you just saw Black Panther get nominated for like 7 Oscars. Before people ask me about the Oscars, I don't care about the Oscars. I still like half cared for award shows like in 2016. By the start of 2017 is like I think the moment where I was like, doesn't matter anymore. But anyway, so a lot of people have been like, the critics don't like it, audience score is pretty good. But if you actually look at like the general rating for critics, it's like a 5.1 out of 10. That's pretty much where I'm at. Overall, I think like James McAvoy gives a really good performance. Samuel L. Jackson has his moments. There's some nice cinematography here and there. The music is effective at points. It has interesting ideas, like Batman v Superman. It brings up interesting ideas. It doesn't do anything right or interesting with said ideas, but at least the ideas are there in concept. I can see where that could be interesting. Not much to say really non-spoilery. I kind of want to get into spoilers. So, if you've seen the trailer and you're like, hey, that looks like fun, you'll probably have fun in the moment, like I did. But it's very much a movie where the more you think about it, the more it sort of starts to fall apart, like shattered glass. That's not even good. I'm going to count that as a shot anyway. What are we up to? 2 shots. I hope you all actually drink alcohol. Actually, wait, hang on. Wait, no, because my viewers might be underage. Don't. Play the shot game if you're over 18 or 21. I'm confusing myself. This is what happens when you record podcast review. Don't listen to anything I say in regards to the shot game. Just forget I said anything. I don't know what's happening anymore. I'm going to take a drink of my Pepsi. This isn't sponsored, of course. I have 400 subs, so I'm not selling it. Where was I? I'm going off track. Spoilers, let's go. Okay. This movie utilizes Bruce Willis very poorly. I've heard a lot of people say he looks bored in a lot of it. I think he actually is trying. I disagree. I think he's trying, but to be fair, the movie gives him absolutely nothing to do. He is literally a prop for the plot, to the point that when he dies in a puddle, it's almost like, sure, you didn't do anything with this character. The start of this movie makes it seem like Bruce Willis is the main character of the film. He isn't. He vanishes for nearly the entire elongated second act, and then he shows up in the third to awkwardly wrestle with James McAvoy, and then he gets drowned in a pothole. And as stupid of a death as that is, I would be fine with it. I could accept it if there was a point to it, or if, thematically speaking, it was the natural conclusion to an arc he had. But he doesn't have an arc in this movie. He's just there to, awkwardly wrestle James McAvoy, basically. And it's a shame. Funnily enough, I actually haven't seen Unbreakable and Split. I just know what happens in them from cultural osmosis. So in a sense, I kind of have this sort of interesting perspective on Glass, because I'm not necessarily attached to any of these characters, but I was still kind of like, what the hell is this, when Bruce Willis died? David Dunn deserved better, I reckon. He didn't do anything the whole movie. The start makes it look like he's the main character, right? Because he's the one, he's hunting down the horde, and then he and McAvoy fight for a bit, then they get caught, and then he doubts himself a little bit, but then Samuel L. Jackson's like, no, you do have powers, and that's it. And it's like, okay, he doubted himself for 5 minutes of actual screen time. How is it naturally a conclusion that he then just dies? I've heard some people say, no, that's the point, because it's like a grounded superhero movie, that's why they all just die. But I'm like, but they still were superheroes, even in a grounded universe. They still had superpowers. This isn't Kick-Ass, where they're still just people in costumes. What would have made better if they actually... Okay, here's how you do it. It turns out they don't have superpowers. Then it makes sense they all just die, because it turns out they didn't. That's a slightly better twist that I just thought of off the top of my head. David dying like that, it doesn't fulfill any arc or purpose in the film. He's a prop for the plot, and at the end he needs to die, so it's we'll just drown him in a pothole. It's I've heard some people compare this to Luke Skywalker's ending. I completely disagree. I'm opening the floodgates by mentioning Last Jedi Luke Skywalker, but you can say what you want about that. You can say they completely mishandled the character. You can throw as many Mark Hamill quotes at me that you want. But first of all, Mark Hamill is giving his best Luke Skywalker performance in that film. Bruce Willis is not giving his best David Dunn performance. To be fair, not like the movie gives him anything to do anyway. But secondly, Luke actually has an arc and a story in The Last Jedi. You can say it's poorly executed, that it doesn't represent the actual Luke Skywalker, whatever. There is a story there, though, and thematically his death ties into that and the themes of the film. David dying here doesn't achieve anything other than, well, he had to die because the plot required him to, right? It doesn't thematically mean anything. It's not a natural conclusion to an arc he had in the film, because he doesn't have an arc. David Dunn is here because, well, he was in Unbreakable, and this is the end of that trilogy, so let's just put him in there. Oh, speaking of which, David Dunn's son, I thought he was the worst actor in this film. I've heard people be like, he was really good, and I'm like, what? Like, I don't know, did I miss something? He, like, I think, like, YMS, Adam, was the only other person I think I've heard say, I don't think he was that good. It felt like he was trying to be younger than what he actually was, but couldn't pull it off convincingly. Like, there was just something off every time he had to, like, speak. He was fine when he wasn't speaking. There was a bit of Hayden Christensen syndrome, where Hayden Christensen can act well in the prequels when he's not speaking, sort of like he can give the facial expressions. It was like that with this guy. But otherwise, I thought he was really bad and awkward whenever he had to speak. What's her name's character? I feel like I should know. I don't know anyone's I know like the three main actors' names, and that's it. Hang on, I'm just going to get it up. So I'm just going to get the actors' names up. Let's Google this. Glass. Loading. Cast. Okay. Here we go. Sarah Paulson. I think she does well enough, but that being said, she's not given a character to play. She's just a psychiatrist, and then at the end it turns out she was evil all along, and that's the twist. Okay, let's talk about the twist. I don't think inherently it's a bad idea. It's just that it kind of pops up at the end. There's no real foreshadowing, really. It doesn't really recontextualize anything in the film. It turns out that she was just lying to them about the things when she tried to convince them that they weren't superheroes. Like, that's it. I mean, it's like, oh, she was the villain of the movie all along and Glass was the hero. And it's like, okay, but she wasn't playing a character. Like, what's her character? I can't describe anything about her. If she just had served the plot, I could accept that. But she's not. She's the villain in the end. And it's like, okay. But, and I think Red Letter Media said this best. They were a bit more positive than I am, but I agree with the idea that this threat suddenly shows up at the end, and then they defeat this threat 5 minutes later, and it's like, okay, am I supposed to care? I don't... And that's the other thing, like, I don't feel like it ties that well into the rest of the movie, and that's the problem, okay? So at the end, Mr. Glass is like, it wasn't a special edition, it was an origin story, and one of the dumbest lines of the movie. There are some dumb lines. I think there's some good dialogue, but there's also some really dumb lines, where it feels like another writer showed up to write like one page sometimes. And it's like, so it's like, some people I've seen defend it are like, it wasn't actually about them. It's like, we just spent the last 2 hours with them in like one room. Is this a character movie or not? It can't be both. And that's the other thing. James McAvoy kind of has an arc with the girl, Casey from Split, where, like, love can help Kevin come into the light, which I think is a bit surface level. I don't think they did enough with that. I think I like that idea. And then, but that's it, because David Dunn sits around off screen for most of the second act, which is really meandering, and Samuel L. Jackson doesn't actually start doing anything until like halfway through the film. So it's like, I'm trying to think on a rewatch, what are you looking for? Because the whole, maybe you don't actually have superpowers and it's just in your heads thing, is interesting in theory, but the movie only brings up the most, like, surface level stuff, and this is where it reminds me of Batman v Superman, where every now and then they'll sort of vaguely reference philosophy and God, and it's like, okay, now bring it together and make an actual point. Because every point in Batman v Superman by the end kind of starts to contradict itself. Like, okay, put Christ imagery in this movie for Superman, but in the end, his decision to die isn't a very Christ-like decision. It's, I'm gonna fight for Lois. This is my world because Lois is my world, and it's like, I don't have these people read the Bible? That's not really a Christ thing. I mean, if you want to do that, fine, but then maybe don't put the Christ imagery in, and the messages start to become confused on what the movie actually wants to be about. And that's what it kind of reminds me of Glass. Glass sort of has that same trouble where it's like, it wants to make a point about comic books, but it doesn't, really. There are some moments where they're talking about comics, and it's like, okay, you're saying it like with this grandiose importance, but we live in the age of comic book movies. I think we all know what comic books are. Do you need to say it like that in such a patronizing tone? Like, just tone it back a bit. And let's talk about the fight scenes in this movie. I get it, it's meant to be like a grounded superhero movie, but I refuse to believe that David Dunn, who was, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he played football at one stage in his life. He was a jock. I refuse to believe that he does not try throwing a punch in this movie. Like, the fights between the Beast and David Dunn are mostly composed of them grabbing each other and like trying to strangle one another, or like throwing each other against stuff. And it kind of makes sense for the Beast because he's more animalistic in how he fights. But sometimes in the first fight, I think it's fine because it's a short fight. But by the finale, I had to resist the urge to shout out, "Just punch him! Just punch him! You use your fist. Try something else." Like, it got to the point where I was getting frustrated watching it because it got boring of them awkwardly choking one another really quick. And it doesn't have to be flashy because it doesn't need to be a big grandiose Marvel movie, right? But like, and maybe this is just my mentality because I do martial arts, but if I'm in a fight and you're in close quarters trying to strangle one another, you don't want to be in that position where it turns into a who can strangle the other person first competition. It's, you want to knock him back, get some space, get some air. You don't want to get caught in that kind of situation, sort of thing. And I know David, he doesn't do martial arts or whatever, right? But again, you'd think he would try throwing a punch or like kneeing the Beast. Like, why are you fighting the Beast on its terms? Does that make sense? No, it's a he. No, I don't need to say it. I'm sort of, it's because I was kind of thinking of the whole horde. So I was thinking of them like as an entity, as like a hive, not as singular minds. So I don't know. It was fine the first fight, and then by the end it was like, okay, can you just, like, it doesn't need to be Marvel again, it doesn't have to be a Marvel movie, just like a punch, just something to make it a bit more visually interesting, because believe it or not, two bald guys awkwardly strangling one another gets boring after about 2 minutes. Although that does remind me, there is a really great shot in the first fight, like, it's a POV from James McAvoy when he's on the roof. That was a really cool shot. There are a few pretty cool shots in this movie, I will give it credit. Although there are also some times where the shots kind of feel like it's there because it's trying to compensate for the cheapness of the film here and there. Because David Dunn, he has like the water sprinkler system, right? As his weakness. And the one scene where we see it after it's been activated, he coughs a bit, like there's water draining on the floor, but then he sits up on the bed, and the bed's completely dry. And that's a bit of a nitpick, but it kind of makes me want to laugh a little bit. Because this wants to be the grounded superhero movie, so like when stuff like that happens, it's a bit harder to swallow it. Sort of thing. And that brings me to another Last Jedi comparison that just made me think of, in terms of twists. Like, this movie's just doing what The Last Jedi does, where it just has twists for the sake of it. I disagree. Again, I'm gonna cause a riot in the comments if people actually watch this video at all. Because, how do I put this? In The Last Jedi, I can come up with a reason. You can say I'm just reading into it, whatever. I'm not here to argue about The Last Jedi. This is just me personally. I can see a reason for nearly every twist. Now it ties in thematically with the film. In Glass, I struggle to think of a reason thematically for certain twists. Again, David's death is one of them where I'm like, what the hell was that? That serves no other point than just it services the plot because David needs to die. But it didn't serve an arc. It's not really a very graceful end for his character. He was the main character for one movie, and then he shows back up to do nothing in this movie, and then he just dies, and it's like, okay. Again, like, if you wanted to compare to Luke Skywalker, it'd be like if Luke showed up in The Last Jedi, did nothing, and then he just, all of a sudden, he gets, like, shot in the back by someone, like a stormtrooper. That would be the comparison. Like, and I know people will be like, well, he doesn't even fight Kylo Ren. The whole point, though, and then he just dies, but the whole point of that ending in The Last Jedi was that he couldn't be the legendary Luke Skywalker everyone wanted him to be, so he projected the idea, and in that projection, he got to be the legendary Luke Skywalker he never could, because he was invincible, he could withstand blaster shots and lightsabers, and he held off the entire First Order. Like, that was the point, right? That's a thematically rich way to end his arc. It was very pacifist too for the Jedi. That makes sense to me. But in Glass, like, I can't figure out what the point of David dying was beyond he needs to die. Also, can we talk about the footage at the end? I'm not sure if that's the most... A lot of people have pointed this out, but I find it hard to believe that's the most convincing way to reveal superheroes. And some people have been like, that's not the point. It's that some people will see it and realize. And it's like, yeah, but really? Isn't it already like that? I remember as a kid, because I was really into, like, Spider-Man, I didn't need to see YouTube footage of what could be superheroes, right? I always wanted, like, spider powers, right? And I thought maybe one day I'd just wake up and I'd have spider powers. Like, you know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure, like, you see it on the news at the end and it's like, I'm sorry, that's... No. The only part that's maybe convincing is, like, if they got footage of James McAvoy eating one of the cops. That's, like, the only part, I reckon. Everything else, you can point to be like, oh, it's fake, or it's an ad for something, blah, 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 blah. And again, like, if you want the whole movie for it to be, it turns out it was about all the rest of the heroes learning about their truth. Okay, fine. Can you actually make the movie about that and not spend 2 hours on characters who don't really have any arcs? I guess Samuel L. Jackson technically has an arc in that he finally gets what he wants in his master plan, and it turns out he was the real hero of the story after all. But also, wasn't he like a psychopath in Unbreakable? Didn't he still kill a whole bunch of people? Like, but it's like a happy ending, and it's like, didn't this plan get more people killed? At some point, like, a couple of innocent cops died. I'm pretty sure, like, that one of them got eaten at least. I don't know. Doesn't really ever call attention to that. And as I said, like, the whole Casey subplot where Kevin can finally come back into the light. But, like, what's the natural point of end there? Like, he gets to die in peace because he was able to come into the light at the end. I mean, okay. I don't know. I felt like something was missing from his death. I think his is the closest to working in a sense. Well, Samuel L. Jackson's works because he got what he wanted in the end. And then James McAvoy's... Maybe it's just because in comparison to David Dunn's death, which is just terrible. Because it's ridiculous that he just gets drowned in a pothole and also because it thematically doesn't tie into anything. And it's just I don't know. Something that the music had some moments here and there. I like when they brought back the split music. I'm surprised the composer of Unbreakable didn't come back for this though, because he's composed on a lot of Shyamalan's films, so I would have thought they would have brought him back. Well, that's a funny thing. In the trailer, the second trailer of Glass, there's like a part in the trailer where it's like, true villains are among us, but true heroes are inside of us, or something like that. And it's like, that had nothing to do with what the movie was about. I mean, not really. I remember watching the trailer, it seemed to be about, you can say, like, because it's a, what the twist? Because it turns out it wasn't about Mr. Glass, like, setting another trial for David, right? And it was just meant to mislead you, but that sounds more interesting to me than this movie, where they did nothing with their characters. Like, the psychology is incredibly surface level. Like, I get more psychology from the heroes in Captain America Civil War than in this movie. You get more out of the character, you get more inside the characters' heads in that movie than you do in this, which is meant to be like this grounded, realistic superhero movie that's about psychology and it's really character driven. Civil War is more character driven than this movie. Don't at me, even though I don't have Twitter, so that joke doesn't really work anyway. But yeah, Civil War is a better character study than Glass is. This movie doesn't do anything interesting, not really at least, I think, with its characters. And it's just like, I don't know. Also, there was I think Samuel L. Jackson is good, but there are some moments where I think he gets a bit too goofy for my liking. And again, he's like the secret hero of the movie, but he doesn't do anything till the second half. Like, he's not in it. As I said, the movie starts off with David, right? And it makes sense. Like, if you look at the trailer, it seems like, even though it's called Glass, it feels very much like a David Dunn movie. Still, right? You know, like, there's that part, like, I love in the second trailer where he's doing the speech and he's like, "It has begun, David. I found someone who will require your full potential. You shouldn't be hiding in the shadows. You may want to try and stop us." I'm like, I was getting really pumped. And it doesn't mean anything. Like, it doesn't reveal anything. Like, I could have accepted the twist at the end, I think, if at the very least, the character stuff, you could have that story be in there too. So it's like, so those 2 hours still meant something beyond a little bit of plot build-up. Because really, the only parts of the plot that you need is that Samuel L. Jackson breaks all of them out and they fight. Like, that's it. You don't need anything else. So it's like, well, what was the point of those 2 hours besides to mislead us? You know, like, what's the lesson? What's the theme? Again, Last Jedi. I can think of themes and lessons from certain portions of the film. I can't find them with this film. And it's like, it's frustrating in a sense. Like, this movie doesn't make me angry. It kind of makes me scratch my head. Similar to how I sort of view Batman v Superman now, where I'm just kind of constantly going, it feels like there's something really close to being brilliant here, and the movie just doesn't capitalize on it. I will give Batman v Superman credit in that it tries to have arcs for its characters. It completely butchers them, but it at least tries. This movie doesn't try with a lot of its characters, as I said. David Dunn is the most disappointing. I can't blame Bruce Willis, almost, because it's like, it doesn't. What's he supposed to do? This movie doesn't give him anything to do other than awkwardly wrestle with James McAvoy. Like, at least James McAvoy has scenes in the second act of this movie. Bruce Willis doesn't get anything. He's just kind of there until the movie needs him to fight, and it's disappointing. As I said, I've seen a lot of people be like, you know, they just wanted a Marvel movie, and it's like, well, no. When you look at the trailers, it seems like we're going to be in this hospital ward or whatever for at least a good chunk of the movie. And when we get in there, and I was thinking to myself, like, at the time, I was like, okay, so we're probably going to be in here for a bit. Okay, this is a good time to do some deep psychology and really get into the minds of these characters. And you don't really, and then it's like, okay, so where's the substance here? Which is, again, as I said, Civil War is a better character study than this movie. That movie is very action heavy, but you still understand the psychology of the characters. You see Black Panther and Zemo and Tony Stark be consumed by revenge, and you see how it sort of consumes them each differently. Zemo's plot, how Tony snaps at the end, and how T'Challa is the only one at the end to realize what's happening and not give in. Like, that's three characters that tie together well right there. And there's plenty of others in the movie. You have Black Widow just wanting to hold her surrogate family together at any cost. There's Vision and Wanda's relationship. Wanda is afraid that the world is going to continue to judge her. Vision becomes disillusioned when he realizes he's not perfect. You've got Cap, who has to finally accept that the past is the past, and that the Avengers and the present is his family now. Like, it's got really good character stuff in that film. And this movie just, it doesn't have any of that. It's a character-driven movie that has no character to it. It's a movie that very much feels like it's stumbling around, trying to come up with some sort of coherent sense of... That's the wrong way to word that sentence, but it's trying really hard to make a point, but it never either decides on what point it wants to make, or it just sort of tumbles over before it can. Again, Batman v Superman brings up philosophy a lot, but in the end it doesn't land on a point. Is the point of the movie meant to be men are still good? I mean, I guess to an extent. I don't know. Is that the point? Batman still killed all those guys when he went to save Martha. So, like, I don't know. Like, Superman's whole arc goes out the toilet because his whole thing is that Earth doesn't accept him, and then at the end, it's like, I'll just fight for Lois then. Okay. Is that what all the build-up was for? I mean, alright. Okay. You know what I mean? It's as I said, like, it's a 5 out of 10 because I think it's got some good cinematography. Most of the acting is at least solid, I feel. I think Elijah's mother does well. Girl Casey does well, although her subplot, because she had an abusive, like, uncle or whatever from Split. Again, I haven't seen it, so I'm just going off what I've heard of people say. And in this movie, it's like, oh, we put him in prison, and it's like, okay. There were some moments that I remember of, like, odd cinematography, or, like, not cinematography, but, like, odd shots. There were times where I think as the characters talk directly into the camera worked. There are other times where it didn't. And there was one time, Casey in school, where it would pan, and I think it would show David's son when he was younger, and it's like, oh, they went to the same school, and it's like, okay, is that relevant? Is this gonna... Okay, no, that doesn't matter. Oh, they went to the same school. Like, is that just meant to be an Easter egg? But you, like, literally zoomed in on the Easter egg? It'd be like, I think there's, like, a map in, like, Iron Man 2, right, and Wakanda's on it. It'd be like if the camera, for no reason, just decided to zoom in on Wakanda. And it's like the best Easter eggs, they're Easter eggs because they're subtle, not, I'm gonna shove this in your face type thing. It was just bizarre in my mind. That's the other thing too, so there's this idea that comics are like a secret history of superhumans. Right? But why would this society allow comics to exist? Because that's how they figure it out in the end, some of the characters. They left like a paper trail. And it's like, I mean, alright. Like the implication, because I remember one stage, I think Casey's like, the first Superman couldn't fly, so it's like, so you're telling me the guy who they originally based Superman on, was like an actual person. It's like, okay, sure. I don't know. It's just for what's meant to feel like a grounded superhero movie, I feel like it veers too much into kind of, it gets a bit too ridiculous at some points for its own good. Like, you can only push it so far. Like, the Dark Knight movies, the trilogy, I think, gets most of it right. Like, there are a few things here and there where it's like, okay, that's a bit goofy, and those are usually the parts people call it out for, like the bullet in the wall where he gets the thumbprint off it, like all that stuff. Watchmen's a different case because, like, if you look at the comic, it's still very much a comic, right? Especially now if you're reading Doomsday Clock, which is, it's good, not great, just good. If you recommend, I still think, actually I think people would still enjoy reading Doomsday Clock. I went off track there for a moment, but anyway. Oh, how good was the audio? Because I leaned back in my chair for a moment there. As you can tell, my audio quality is about as good as, I was going to make an easy joke and then I couldn't think of anything. Basically, because I have really terrible audio quality, so it's probably bad that I was leaning back for a bit. Anyways, I just lost where I was too. I'm going to take a drink. I think this movie uses color. Well, it's not subtle, but you know what? I'm fine with that. But yeah, I think it's, I don't know, for what was very much a character-driven series of films in a sense, it feels odd that this movie spends 2 hours of wheel spinning and then for it to be like, oh, it wasn't about them after all. This was just the origin for a bigger universe. And it's like, okay, fine, just, could you not have put something of substance in those 2 hours before that? Like, what was the point here? Like, people say The Last Jedi is wheel spinning. At least there's points and lessons learned in those 2 hours. This movie doesn't achieve anything in those 2 hours, character-wise, on anywhere near that level. Kylo Ren has an arc, Poe has an arc, Finn has an arc, Rey has an arc, Luke has an arc. There's actually, you could say, there's actual substance there. Glass has none of that. Not really. James McAvoy kind of has an arc. Samuel L. Jackson gets to achieve what he always wanted, but again, he doesn't show up to like the second half of the film. Like, he doesn't do anything. He sits there in like a catonic state, basically. David Dunn is just a puppet for the plot. He's just dangling on strings, and then they cut the strings, and that's it for him. What a finale for his character. Like, I almost don't blame Bruce Willis for not caring, because again, he vanishes for a good chunk of this movie. And every time they cut back to him, it's like, oh yeah, Bruce Willis is in this movie. Remember at the first 20 minutes, they made you think he was the main character? Like, the whole Bruce Willis is hunting down James McAvoy thing is cool, and then the movie gets into the hospital, and then it decides it wants to be like a psychological thriller without any of the psychology behind it. It's like, give me something of like substance. Like, I don't, like, it's funny because it might sound like I'm frustrated, but I'm actually smiling right now. It's like a kind of funny, what the hell went wrong here sort of thing. It must sound like I'm really negative because again, I'm still very on the middle on it because I think some of the, again, like the cinematography is good. I think even though the second act feels a bit long, I still think the pacing is overall pretty decent. I think it just might be the second act feels long because well, of course, because you realize those 2 hours didn't mean anything really. The Beast gets shot when he's not paying attention. Oh, that reminds me. So there's the part where Samuel L. Jackson's been injured by the Beast, and then he falls forward, and it's meant to be like this moment, or like, because you see, like, he's struggling because they're all dying. Except Samuel L. Jackson falling forward and like breaking his legs I don't know if it was Samuel L. Jackson's acting or just the angle or the sound effects. It was freaking hilarious. I had to resist the urge to laugh. There was something really comedic about that one shot, that one moment. So, like, I don't. Also, what was with the like? Also, what was with the way that he does the first name Mister, last name Glass moment in this movie? Because in the trailer, it works well. You know, like in the first trailer, where it's like, "What do we call you, sir? First name Mister, last name Glass." But in the movie, I don't know if it was a different take or if is this something about it. And then they replayed it like a minute later, and it's like, is Shyamalan going for unintentional like comp? I don't like. There is some like baffling moments in this movie where it's like, is it trying to be funny here? Like there are some good laughs with James McAvoy. Like there's the part where like he's first put in his room and he's like trying to edge out of the camera, and I think he puts the finger up at it. Like that was there were some good laughs, but also it's just a bit of an odd film. It's very much a mixed bag for me because again, I kind of want to give it points because it doesn't feel like a case of Shyamalan not knowing what the hell he's doing like in Last Airbender. It feels very much like he had some sort of idea and then just somewhere along the way he stumbled and tripped, like with Batman v Superman. It felt like Snyder, Goya, and Terrio had some semblance of an idea of what they're doing. It was obvious they made the movie they wanted to make, but somewhere along the way, they just tripped and fell from the path. This is very much Shyamalan's film, I still feel. Although I think the whole cameo bit with him, where he connects it to the other two films, and it's like, okay, do you want to, like... I mean, it's kind of funny, but also a bit... It's a bit self-indulgent. This isn't Lady in the Water self-indulgent, where he writes himself as the Messiah, but it's like a case of, I was in a really bad place back in Unbreakable. I was dealing drugs, but now I'm doing better than ever. Like, is that an admittance that your last movies were bad? I thought he was, like, very defensive of those films. So I don't know what's going on there. But... me, personally, it's a 5 out of 10. I don't know. Leave your thoughts in the comments. It's a bit of a missed opportunity, in my opinion. Oh, wait, quickly. I think the whole twist where it's like, it turns out Mr. Glass also created you because your father was on that train that David Dunn was on. I thought this had already... didn't fans already deduce this from Split? Like, was that meant to be a twist or not? Because I don't, like, show you straight away, and it's, like, dramatic cut away from new footage to old footage from Unbreakable, and I was sitting there, like, wasn't this already common knowledge in the last movie? Didn't everyone, like, piece this together? But I guess not, so... yeah, I don't know. It's disappointing. The same way Batman v Superman was kind of really disappointing for me. It's not like, I don't think it's flat out terrible. It's not like a 1 out of 10. But like Batman v Superman, it feels like it's frustratingly close to really being something brilliant, and then it's not. It wants so hard to make some kind of brilliant point, but that almost seems to be its Achilles heels, and it just falls apart trying to make that point, trying to be great. And I think that's all I have to say, really. I don't know. Like, yeah, I think that's it, guys. If you want to leave your thoughts in the comments or yell at me about The Last Jedi, I mean, sure. Actually, I didn't make any more glass puns, so you only had to take 2 shots if you were of legal age. Only drink responsibly. There we go. I've covered myself now. I should probably stop recording videos like at really late in the morning. It's 1 a.m. where I am right now, so it's probably not a good idea to do it like this. Thank you guys for listening to me ramble about Glass, a movie about rambling. Ironically enough, that was... oh, not really, actually, I'm actually rambling about something Glass doesn't. I think I made more of a point with this than Glass does about anything else. So, not the most satisfying film, as I said. Like, if you see it, you might have a bit of... Actually, look, if you're in spoilers, you've probably seen it. I don't know. I just think it doesn't really deliver on much. So the action is just awkward. I guess Shyamalan just doesn't know how to direct action. Again, you don't... It's realistic, but unless everyone who I know who has ever been in a fight is a liar, punches are usually thrown. And I'm willing to bet not all of them are lying, because I've seen a friend afterwards and his knuckles were bruised. So unless he punched a wall, I don't know, it's fine. It's just fine. You know, disappointing, but fine. It has some enjoyability to it, but like as I said, like the twist, it comes a bit too late. There's no real foreshadowing. And when it happened, I don't... It's like, why am I... Oh, the part where Sarah Paulson, I feel like I got her name right, when she finds out what Glass has done, and she, just goes into a hallway and screams. That was another moment where I felt like it was meant to be, serious, but I was almost laughing. There are a few moments like that, where it's like Shyamalan is clearly going for, something, trying to get a different reaction from the audience, but he just gets comedy, and he gets getting bloody tongue-tied now, where it's just funny instead. So Glass, it's I'm rambling now completely. Yeah, I'm gonna end this now. So it's fine, but I'd say, considering the send-off it gives some of its characters, it's probably not a very good conclusion to a trilogy. I'm interested in actually going and watching Unbreakable and Split now, just to see if that changes my opinion on this more. I have a feeling it might make my opinion worse, because if I have, more of a connection to David Dunn and the Horde and Mr. Glass, it means I'll be just more annoyed when they all just unceremoniously die for the sake of, it was an origin story all along that was trapped inside a character study that had little to no actual character study. Seriously, for a psychological thriller, this movie's psychology is so surface level that it's kind of hilarious. I'm no great writer. In fact, I've written some complete and utter garbage, but it reminds me of some of the garbage I've written, ironically enough, where it's it goes for the most surface level ideas. It's definitely better than anything I've written, still, but there were moments that reminded me of my own terrible work, and I was just like, oh god. So yeah, Glass, it was fine. 5 out of 10. Tell me why you loved it or hated it or thought it was just okay. And no, I'm not talking about Ghostbusters. Okay, I think I'm done. Thanks everyone for watching. If you want more videos like this, subscribe or something or other. That's what you meant to say at the end of videos, right? Something like that. This is the Groovy Movie Man, and I am signing out. Thanks for watching. Blah 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 blah. I'm tired. What's going on? What's happening? Where am I? Oh, I'm doing a review for Glass. They should have called this movie Breakable. God, my humor is worse than usual today. That's saying something, because my humor is usually pretty pathetic. So this is a new low. I hope you enjoyed or whatever, because that's my catchphrase, enjoy or whatever. Thank you all, I'm actually turning off for now. Thanks again for watching. Groovy Movie Man, signing out. See you next time.